Good morning. It's Friday, April 4th. The multi-front war in the Middle East is now 546 days old. I'm your host, Jonathan Schanzer, coming to you live again from Tel Aviv in Israel. Welcome back to the FDD Morning Brief. Well, today is the Jerusalem Marathon. Thousands of Israelis and others from countries all around the world have descended upon the holy city to run 26.2 miles. That's a hard pass from your humble host here. I've run one marathon in my life, and I don't intend to run another again. But I must say, the last year and a half has felt like a marathon. This war has required patience, stamina, and determination. And don't get me started on the Israelis. The people here have shown a determination unlike anything I've seen. There's a sense here that they may be on the back stretch of the war. But I can tell you from personal experience, those last few miles can be grueling. Our guest today is Emily Schrader, an Israeli journalist, author, and activist who works as an anchor over at ILTV News. Almost exactly 1 year ago, she was on an episode of this very show with my colleague Jonathan Conricus hosting. Emily is a rock star on social media, weighing in on Israel, Iran, and the wider Middle East. We'll have her on the program in just a few short minutes. I've just had a series of fascinating meetings in Israel. There's a sense that the tide of the war is changing. Hamas and Hezbollah are severely weakened. The United States is hammering the Houthis in Yemen. The ballistic missiles have slowed. The Islamic Republic of Iran looks increasingly isolated. If things shake out right, an endgame could start to take shape. In all of my meetings, a consistent theme has emerged. What if one enemy falls and another enemy rises? I'm talking here about Turkey. The country's strongman, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, is the regional power behind the rise of the al-Qaeda regime in Syria. He's a patron of Hamas. He's threatening Greece and Cyprus, and he's a raging anti-Semite, now openly calling for the destruction of the state of Israel. This reminds me of the end of World War II. The decline of Adolf Hitler led to the rise of Joseph Stalin. History doesn't always repeat, but sometimes it rhymes. Syria is the first battleground here, and Israel is already striking targets to try and prevent Turkey from establishing a threatening air presence in northern Syria. A diplomatic spat between the two countries is now in full view on social media. Where things go from here, nobody knows, but Israel's goal is to prevent the Turks from becoming an unwelcome neighbor to their north. As they always say, this ain't the Midwest, folks. This is the Middle East. The potential defeat of your mortal enemy may not yield peace. Rather, it could lead to a new era of new threats. Now for your headlines. Headline 1, let's talk about that Israeli military activity in Syria. On Wednesday, the IDF struck what it described as remaining military capabilities that belonged to the former Bashar al-Assad regime. Among Israel's targets was the notorious T4 airbase in central Syria, which Turkey wanted to convert into a drone facility, if not something even more threatening. Down in southern Syria, the IDF was busy seizing weapons and dismantling terrorist infrastructure. During that operation, gunmen opened fire on Israeli troops, and the IDF took out multiple hostile actors in the ensuing firefight. Miles away in Paris, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar told the press that Turkey wants to turn Syria into a Turkish protectorate. Whether France, other European states, or even the United States are willing to intervene is an open question. I tend to think they won't lift a finger. Headline 2, the IDF is establishing a new security corridor in southern Gaza. This is Philadelphia 2.0. In a video message, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel is shifting gears in Gaza and will carve out a corridor stretching from Rafah to Khan Yunis. The IDF has named this new passage the Morag corridor, referring to an Israeli settlement in the area before unilaterally pulling out of Gaza in 2005. That withdrawal, of course, led to the disaster that Israel is still dealing with. Hamas filled the void, and that inexorably led to the October 7th massacre. The name of the game now is pressure. Netanyahu said that Israel is going to keep upping the pressure on Hamas until the terrorist group releases the hostages. The longer Hamas refuses, the more pressure they're going to feel. It's a battle of wills at this point, folks. Israel would love to stop fighting, but they want a complete and total victory, a complete and total capitulation of Hamas. They want them out of the Gaza Strip. Yesterday, the IDF's new spokesman, Brigadier General Effie Defrin, said the IDF has entered a new stage in Gaza. We don't know much about this new stage operationally. All I can tell you is that Israel is hammering Hamas and turning the screws. Since returning to this Gaza offensive in mid-March, the IDF has struck over 600 targets and eliminated over 250 bad guys, including a dozen senior Hamas officials involved in governing the Gaza Strip. The group's power is slowly but surely collapsing, and I, for one, think that's a good thing. Headline 3, Russia and Iran's deputy foreign ministers spoke with each other about Iran's nuclear program. According to a Russian readout, the men discussed ways to reduce tensions over the illicit program, which they said Western countries had, quote, artificially and unreasonably, quote, end quote, stoked. Yes, that is a not so veiled reference to the United States. You'll recall that President Trump threatened over the weekend to bomb the heck out of Iran if a new nuclear deal isn't reached. Moscow said that a military strike on Iran's nuclear facilities would be illegal, unacceptable, and cause irreversible radiological damage. Interestingly, the White House appeared to change its position on nuclear talks this week. Several weeks ago, President Trump sent a letter to Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei urging the regime to enter direct nuclear talks. Tehran categorically rejected that possibility, but left the door open for indirect negotiations. And now 2 U.S. officials told Axios that things may be inching in that direction. But that doesn't mean the military option is off the table. In fact, the U.S. military is beefing up its presence in the Middle East at this very moment, sitting not too far from Iran off the coast of Yemen. And bonus headline 4, the U.S. Treasury Department imposed sanctions on a network of Houthi financiers and procurement officers. Treasury targeted 5 individuals. These guys have been coordinating with an IRGC-backed Houthi official to procure tens of millions of dollars worth of goods for the jihadi pirates in Yemen. And guess where these commodities came from? Russia. They included weapons and what Treasury described as other sensitive items. And here's something that you may not have expected. The procurement network shipped stolen Ukrainian grain to Houthi-controlled territory in Yemen. As it turns out, 2 Afghan businessmen based in Russia shipped Ukrainian grain from occupied Crimea to Yemen on board a Russia-flagged vessel. This was all done at the direction and in coordination with the Houthis. Treasury said that one of the Afghan men worked with an Iranian money launderer who's based in, wait for it, Turkey. Somehow it all keeps coming back to Iran and Turkey, doesn't it? All right, it's time for that interview now with Emily Schrader of ILTV News. She's an absolute force of nature on social media, and she's become a tireless voice for the policy of maximum pressure on the regime in Iran, along with maximum support for the Iranian people. Welcome to the program, Emily Schrader.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here.
All right, great to have you. All right, let's first talk about your life since the outbreak of the war on October 7th in 2023. There's been a battle on social media for hearts and minds, not just in the United States, but around the world. You've been at the center of it. So tell us about this journey that you're still on.
Well, I think one of the things that's been most alarming about all of this aftermath of October 7th is also that the people online started celebrating October 7th before October 7th was even over. And while it's normal to see a lot of hate on social media, we also saw that in person in the United States. And I think that's what sets this apart from previous operations that I've seen, at least in the aftermath on social media and how people respond to what's going on. And since then, of course, it's only escalated. Now, part of this, of course, is just how social media networks work. Whenever something is negative, it goes much further, especially when it comes to the news cycle. But when it comes to Israel in particular, it's more hostile than I've ever seen. I've had an unbelievable number of death threats. And I think one thing that people discount is the role of state-sponsored disinformation and how they're trying to subvert the narrative when it comes to Israel before it's even been established by Israel.
So who are those states? I mean, state sponsorship's a big word, right? I mean, that implies sort of almost a conspiracy on the part of state actors. So who are we talking about here?
I mean, as you said in your intro so eloquently, it really all circles back to Turkey and, well, Qatar as well. That one wasn't mentioned, but now it is. Turkey, Qatar, Iran, Russia, and China, of course. These are all the states that are the most active in subverting pro-Western sentiment on social media. And what's crazy to me as a journalist and as someone who very clearly sees this pattern happening across all social media platforms is why the West isn't even playing the game. I mean, forget about Israel and Hezbollah. We talk about, public diplomacy on the Israeli side and Israelis telling their stories. Even Americans are not doing that the way that they should be doing that in terms of advocating for what's good, what's right in the West. This is something that's entirely missing from the social media narrative. And it also doesn't represent reality. When you look at statistical polling, Israel's a fantastic example. The majority of Americans support Israel's right to exist, support Israel's right to defend itself after October 7th. And even if they have questions about how Israel is doing it and they're not certain, and they don't maybe normally support war, they generally support Israel. If you went on X today, you would think that the entire world hates the state of Israel and wants to destroy it because it's the worst thing that ever existed for all of humanity. So it's simply not reality, the subversive narratives that we see dominating on social media.
I completely agree. All right. At some point early on in this war, or maybe even before the war, I mean, you can tell me, but I saw you really begin to dial in on the Islamic Republic of Iran. You've been advocating for the Iranian people in particular. So tell us a little bit about the logic behind this approach and whether it's working.
I mean, I think that the application of the maximum pressure sanctions is absolutely necessary. And we see already that the Tehran is under tremendous pressure, the likes of which, of course, they haven't seen since the last Trump administration. But the situation inside Iran for the people is really abysmal. I mean, I support the sanctions campaign in full, but I do have to note that there are people who do suffer as a result. I think that most Iranians will tell you, however, that it's worth it. Because the ultimate goal here is to bring down this regime. They don't want a nuclear weapon to be in the hands of the Islamic Republic any more than the state of Israel does. So there's good and bad in it, but it's an absolutely necessary step in order to get us to where we need to be. And when I say us, I don't just mean Israelis and I don't just mean Americans. I also mean Iranians. The entire Middle East is being negatively impacted by the existence of this regime. And one thing that does concern me about the sanctions campaign isn't that, they're finally being enforced, but that I hope that the people who are implementing these sanctions and the Trump administration understand that the entire equation of the Middle East does not change until there's regime change in Iran. Now, that doesn't mean that America needs to go through a war and bomb Israel and force a regime change. That's not the role of the United States in this equation, nor is it the role of Israel. But it's something that does need to happen. And I think that if the United States and or Israel are forced to act against an Iranian nuclear program or anything else inside of Iran, that is the window for the people of Iran to do something and to rise up, as we have seen them try to do so many times before and end up being ignored and often stabbed in the back, especially when we look at what the Obama administration did in prior, uprisings within Iran.
Yeah, that was the Green Revolution back in 2009, where President Obama just sort of stood by and watched as protesters were being beaten and raped and in some cases murdered. We know that the U.S. has not been great on this. What about Israel? I mean, what is Israel doing to support the Iranian people? I recently saw the prime minister come out and issued some statements, video statements, I think for the people of Iran on the occasion of Nowruz, their sort of, I guess, their Ramadan of sorts. Is Israel doing enough, in your view, right now to support the Iranian people?
I think that the mainstream public opinion in Israel is generally favorable towards the people of Iran, but there's a large gap in information and in understanding. Most Israelis, especially a younger generation, aren't even aware that Iranians aren't Arab. It's a totally different culture. It's a totally different reality. And unfortunately, especially the younger generation hasn't been exposed to that. And why do I say especially the younger generation? Because prior to 1979, we saw huge cooperation between Israelis and Iranians. We saw Israelis who regularly lived and worked in Tehran and vice versa. There was tremendous cooperation between the two two countries. And even under the Shah, the state of Iran was one of the first Muslim countries to de facto, albeit, but to recognize the Jewish state of Israel when Israel, declared independence. So this history between the two peoples isn't really something new, unlike Israel with the Arab world. And I think that there's not a lot of information about that to younger generations. And that's one of the things that I focus on so much, because I want people to understand more that we do have essentially 80 to 90 million allies inside of Iran. I mean, these are people who, day one on October 7th, I mentioned the people online turning against Israel. The Iranians did the opposite, online and in person. Before, the Jewish community in Canada, for example, had organized a rally to support the state of Israel after October 7th. I had Iranians in Canada being like, we set up a rally, we're going to go support Israel outside the Israeli embassy in Canada. So it's been really very impressive and heartwarming to see in a very difficult time.
All right, I need to ask you this because I'm in Tel Aviv right now, and I've been talking to officials here and trying to get a sense of what's going on. How do you see the Iranian regime's overall strength in the region right now? Many people are saying that they look cornered, but are we entering into an end game? Do you think that the regime is potentially in mortal danger, as some people here might profess?
I think the regime is under more pressure than they have been in a very, very long time. I mean, they're kind of like a cat with 9 lives. They manage to pull it out of the bag every single time and survive one way or the other. They don't have anyone to prop them up this time, like Joe Biden or Obama. So we'll see if that actually works. And that's why I emphasized before the importance of supporting regime change, even verbally. Having a U.S. administration that supported the idea of regime change, because that is what the majority of the people inside of Iran do want, and they've been very, very clear and vocal about this at great cost and risk to themselves. So this is something that I think the United States and Israel have an obligation to do, and they have not done. Now, I understand why, but it is something that I think is important, and I would like to see more support from Israel on that front. When it comes to being on, the verge of collapsing, yeah, that's kind of what it looks like right now in the streets, from what I'm hearing from my friends in Iran that, don't have water or electricity half the day. And we're talking about in major cities, not just in rural areas. So they're in really bad conditions, and the people are furious because any and all resources that go to that regime go directly into these proxy terror groups. And they know that. No one knows that better than the people. So it could go either way. It could go either way. It's too soon to say whether they're really on their last legs. But I will say that what Israel has done in Syria and Lebanon, and is doing, in addition to the United States in Yemen, is fantastic for the entire Middle East. And I think it can usher in a new era of cooperation with Israel's Arab neighbors as well.
Yeah, I agree. And it's good to see the Houthis being cut down to size. I think they were having outsized influence for a group of their sort of stature. And I mean, this is not a professional army here. This is not even a professional terrorist group. This is a ragtag group of people that somehow found themselves in possession of ballistic missiles, and they've been threatening Israel. They've been harassing ships in the Red Sea, and you finally are beginning to see them weakening. Some reports right now that they may be willing to come to the table to broker some kind of end of conflict with the U.S. and maybe even Israel. That's really interesting to me. But let me ask you, I mean, you're not in Israel now. You're in D.C., but you live in Israel, and you've been in Israel throughout this war. How do you think the Israeli people are managing? I described it earlier in the program as a marathon. Do you think the stamina is holding up as Israel has gone back into round 2 in Gaza? Been meeting with some of the reservist people that have spent 200 days, 300 days, 400 days, sometimes 500 days in the military. Many of these people have spent hundreds of days inside Gaza. Are they ready to slug it out for another couple of rounds here in order to fight to the finish?
I mean, I think that Israelis are pretty resilient and will do whatever we have to do at the end of the day. But yes, we're very fatigued. People are very, very tired. And I would say the thing that weighs on the nation more than anything is the hostages who are still in Gaza. This has made it an impossibly mentally, physically, and emotionally taxing situation for the entire country. There isn't a single person that's untouched by this. There isn't a single person that doesn't think about this on a regular basis. It really is within the core of the country, this idea that we can't leave anyone behind, and to sometimes that's to our detriment as a nation as well. And I have a number of opinions about that when it comes to the actual policy, but when it comes to the heart of the country, this is what is eating us away, and this is why they do it. This is why terrorist groups do this and engage in this hostage taking. So we have to find a solution to that, and there's a variety of different political approaches within Israel that people are now arguing over. And, I'm hopeful that we're able to come to a solution to get them home, because after that, we will and do actually, even according to polling, see widespread support for a continuation of the war in Gaza, until, Hamas's demise, and against any other terrorist organizations that are threatening the state of Israel. The real thing on the mind of Israelis now, though, is hostages.
Yeah, undeniably. I was actually just at Hostage Square last night. I actually saw Emily Damari, one of the returned hostages, and just her very presence there inspired so many Israelis. There was just a throng of people around her last night, and you just get a sense that everybody is tracking the stories of every one of these people, and those that have come home are celebrated, but those that are still there, they are. I mean, everybody is still on pins and needles, hoping to bring back the remaining 20 or so live hostages. And of course, their bodies that parents want to return home. The families want to get them back. And it is, the stickers are everywhere. The signs are everywhere. The reminders are everywhere. And the pain of this country, it's hard to deny. Real quick, before I let you go, you are over at ILTV. Tell us just a little bit about this channel, and also tell us about this show. I've seen some of this. I've actually been on ILTV with you. You've interviewed me, so I'm returning the favor. But you also are on this program called The Quad. It has this one particular segment that I particularly enjoy. I believe it's the Scumbag of the Week. Just tell us a little bit about the program and this part of the program in particular.
Yeah. So I'm at ILTV where I anchor the news, and I also have a show called Viewpoint where I do more in-depth interviews. But the show you're talking about is the JNS show called The Quad, which is with 4 different Israeli women from different backgrounds with different experiences. But yes, every week we have a scumbag of the week. We also have a hero of the week, but that's never as popular. You know how it goes on social media. But the scumbag of the week, where we highlight someone who did something particularly egregious this week. But I can't tell you who mine is going to be this week, because I don't want to give away any spoilers. You'd have to watch.
Who was your scumbag last week? How's that?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, who was your scumbag last week?
My scumbag, I didn't have a scumbag last week because I was here in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
But a recent one was Jackson Hinkle, who really is, could be for every week.
Yes, I think that's right. All right, we're going to leave it there. Emily Schrader, thank you for joining us today on the FDD Morning Brief.
Thank you.
All right, here's what FDD has on tap for you today. 2 new episodes of the Iran Breakdown, FDD's new podcast on the most important things to know about Iran, hosted by CEO Mark Dubowitz. That dropped on Wednesday. One features prolific Iranian-American activist Masih Alinejad, who the Iranian regime tried to assassinate 3 times in the United States. And the other spotlights former Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid and his former national security advisor, also an international fellow at FDD, Eyal Hulata. I highly recommend checking out both episodes wherever you get your podcasts. My colleague Natalie Econow recently hosted the FDD Morning Brief and then traveled to Texas to testify before the House Committee on Homeland Security, Public Safety, and Veterans Affairs about the threat of Qatari funding in U.S. higher education. Qatar, as we all know, is a patron of Hamas, the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and the Muslim Brotherhood. Meanwhile, Doha's dirty money is contributing significantly to the indoctrination of American students, and that simply must end. Finally, FDD's David May has a new piece in the National Interest on the decaying ties between the United States and South Africa. No surprise there. Pretoria has consistently demonstrated its anti-American stance. It's lauding terrorists. It's bringing Israel to court at the ICJ and so much more. So check that out at the National Interest. And that, folks, is a wrap for today. If you're craving more smartness, check out the expert analysis on our website, FDD.org. Read our quick takes on X at FDD, or take a peek at our Instagram and YouTube channels. Always good reels there to watch, and make that tax-deductible donation at fdd.org/invest. We simply cannot do this work, this program, or anything else without our donors. Tune in Monday for another riveting episode of the FDD Morning Brief. Until then, have a restful weekend. I'm Jonathan Schanzer, signing off for FDD.